Hello, I'm Sarah Coates, filling in for Natasha Kirchak, and this is Global Eye, your window to the world straight from Tel Aviv. Now, we're going to be travelling around the globe for the next hour together to give you every story you need to know. So let's start right here in Israel. What's the buzz? These are today's most trending stories. Israeli airline Israel has announced that starting next month it will fly from Tel Aviv to Morocco. Well, it's on the back of a deal signed in December normalising ties between the two countries, with Morocco's tourism minister saying that she's expecting around 200,000 Israeli tourists to enter the country within the first year of flights. A monumental task lays ahead for Israeli archaeologists who are set to restore the biggest Roman structure ever built in the region. Well, the Ashkelon Basilica measures more than 328 feet in length and was flattened more than 1,800 years ago when an earthquake hit the region along the Dead Sea fault line. Researchers from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem have come to a conclusion many of us already suspected, that people who are optimistic live longer. They used data collected since the 90s, a number of factors also measured like social skills, anxiety levels and optimism, with people aged between 85 and 90 with a high score in the optimism department, scoring at least a 20% higher rate of survival compared to those who aren't so optimistic. Well, it seems Bobby McFerrin's song "Don't Worry, Be Happy" hits the nail right on the head. Well, on that note, there is plenty of optimism right here in Israel that a new government will be formed as early as tomorrow, with that being the deadline for the 7 parties that make up the so-called Change Bloc to finalise coalition talks and present the coalition government to President Reuven Rivlin. Well, negotiating teams have been meeting throughout the day as talks advance, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu looking staggeringly close to being unseated. Let's go now to our Tel Aviv studio, where our senior correspondent Owen Alterman is standing by. Good evening, Owen. We know that these teams have been meeting throughout the day. Tell me, what is the very latest?
The very latest, Sarah, is that they're still meeting and the coalition agreements are still not finalized. And of course, the clock is ticking. And of course, it's human nature in any negotiating process, let alone one with eight parties, to get it all the way down to the wire. There are a number of issues still in dispute. I won't bring the viewers all the way into the weeds, but just one that's actually at the heart of the dispute is the issue of the committee to nominate judges. Just as in the United States, the issue of nominating judges, particularly to the Supreme Court, is a hot political issue here in Israel. Ayelet Shaked of the Yamina list wants to be on that committee herself, wants to make sure that the right wing, and again, this is a complicated government that includes right, center, and left factions, she wants to make sure she's on the committee herself and that the right wing has veto power over the judges who are nominated. Merav Michaeli of the Labor Party, again, the left-wing party, had been promised a spot on the committee. So this is still being hashed out in the halls of the negotiation. No resolution yet. I think the conventional wisdom, Sarah, is that they will in some way get to yes here, but they haven't gotten there yet, and there's still time to negotiate, meaning they're going to keep going.
Yeah, certainly right through the night, perhaps. And Owen, tell me, what is the process tomorrow?
The process, according to Israel's basic law, its quasi-constitution, Sarah, is that once Yair Lapid has confidence that he's formed a government, has coalition agreement signed, he notifies the president and the speaker of the Israeli parliament, Yariv Levin. Yariv Levin, the speaker of the parliament, then notifies the full parliament. And once he's done so, the clock starts ticking 7 days. And within 7 days, there needs to be a plenary session to vote yes or no on confidence in the government. And at that point, it's sworn in. There is a lot of talk here in Israel tonight, Sarah, that Yair Lapid has an incentive to get this done by 11 o'clock local time tomorrow. Why is that? Because it is said if he does it by then the swearing in has to be exactly a week later. By Wednesday, if it's at 11:01 in the morning, let's say, then potentially Yariv Levin, the parliament speaker, could put it off by 5 days until the Monday afterwards. Why is that important? Because every day matters, because every day brings with it more pressure, particularly on the more right-wing members of this potential government, not to vote in favor of it. And Sarah, as you know, as many of our viewers know, this government hangs by a thread. It needs every single one of its voters, of its members of parliament to support it, or it might not get sworn in. So there are days of drama ahead potentially for us here in Israel.
Well, there's never a dull day, Owen, in Israeli politics. And you've been out and about talking to people on the streets. What do Israelis think about this government that could be sworn in?
Obviously, Sarah, that depends on where you stand politically. A lot of right-wing Israelis don't like it very much. Even a lot of the voters for the Yamina party itself aren't particularly happy about the party potentially going into the government. Those in the center or left, of course, happier with it, although maybe not entirely happy because the right wing would have disproportionate power within this government. But they're happy at least to see the back of Prime Minister Netanyahu, whom they do not like, and to see some of their members of parliament become ministers. Nitzan Horowitz, the head of the Meretz party, slated to become health minister. Merav Michaeli, the head of the Labor Party, slated to become transportation minister. So these are positions with potential power. So they're obviously happy to see that. And obviously, Sarah, there are a lot of Israelis just hoping that the political quagmire ends with the swearing in of this government. But given just how fragile this government would be, I'm not sure the quagmire would fully end. But those who are part of this government would achieve what is, frankly, their central goal, which is ousting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And that happens even if this government is sworn in for just one day.
Yeah, and we really saw Netanyahu over the last few days lashing out. Owen, tell me, what is next for him?
Well, listen, Netanyahu would presumably become the leader of the opposition. Of course, his court case would continue to go on as it has. Netanyahu would become opposition leader. Most immediately for Netanyahu, within his own party, there are senior politicians who are out to challenge him and have not been shy about that over the last few days. So Netanyahu will need to bat back those challenges. That said, Sarah, he has substantial support within the Likud rank and file, and he might be able to do that. One would have to assume that Netanyahu would be a potentially very effective opposition leader. His rhetorical talents are not contested by anyone. He's an incredible political strategist, so he could potentially be an effective opposition leader. That said, not all that easy in this country, Sarah, to form a government. It might be easy to get back to elections. Might not be so easy for Netanyahu to get out of those elections with the government. He hasn't been able to do it 4 times. So again, what is his long-term plan or medium-term plan? In some sense, it might be more of the same, to try to get the country to elections and then hope for the best.
All right, certainly very interesting times ahead, Owen Alterman. Always good to get your take. Thank you very much. Now, while there's still uncertainty over who will lead the country, one thing that is for sure is that Israel is well and truly emerging from coronavirus. Well, as of today, most COVID restrictions have been scrapped, with life finally getting back to normal.
After 3 coronavirus lockdowns and a highly successful inoculation campaign that saw 70% of the population vaccinated, Israelis are tasting freedom again.
What is COVID? I don't remember. It's like
the Israeli Health Ministry scrapping all coronavirus restrictions.
We're coming out of it, and there's not much more.
Starting this week, capacity limits at stores and restaurants are no more, and indoor gatherings are no longer restricted to people who can prove they've been vaccinated or have recovered from the coronavirus.
About this moment for a long time, and we're finally getting there.
But one thing that is sticking around is the mask, at least indoors, and until more citizens are vaccinated. Daily cases are down almost to single digits, a stark contrast from the pandemic's peak, which saw some 88,000 active cases in Israel. This major improvement priming the pump for vaccinated tourists. The first batch arrived last week, and Israel's tourism boss was on hand to greet them.
Everything is open here, from restaurants to hotels to resorts to holy places and so on. And we have a lot to offer.
A message globetrotters everywhere are only happy to receive as the bane of coronavirus becomes a memory and sounds of normalcy make their way back into Israelis' livelihoods.
Certainly great to see things finally getting back to normal. And we do need to go out for a short commercial break, but right after this, what is up with Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, seen struggling to breathe in his latest televised address? We'll have all of that and plenty more right after the break. Stay right there.